This is a publication of the portal soysephardi.org.
Today we're going to travel back to the late 15th century to uncover a really harrowing but absolutely vital piece of Sephardic history. We're talking about the story of Rabbi Abraham Saba and a place that would become chillingly known as the Island of Lizards.
Just listen to these words. They come directly from a man who lived through it all. This quote from Rabbi Saba's own writings, well, it sets the stage for a story about persecution, about impossible choices, and about incredible resilience. So how on earth did it come to this?
You see, our story doesn't actually begin with tragedy. It begins with a desperate search for safety, a journey that led thousands of people to a place they thought was a safe harbor. But as they would find out, it was really a carefully laid trap.
Okay, so picture this. It's 1492. The Alhambra decree has just been issued expelling all Jews from Spain. A staggering 120,000 people, including Rabbi Saba, fled over the border into neighboring Portugal. All they were searching for was a new beginning.
So you might be asking, why Portugal? Well, on the surface, it seemed like the most logical choice, right? There was no dangerous sea to cross, the language was similar, the culture was familiar. For families that had been completely uprooted, Portugal looked like the most reliable option out there, a real beacon of hope in a world that had been turned completely upside down.
But that hope, it was incredibly short-lived. The Portuguese king at the time, John II, he saw the arrival of all these refugees not as a humanitarian crisis, but as a financial opportunity. And that set the stage for a really cruel and calculated bargain.
So the king's first demand was a massive entry tax, 100 cruzados per person. Now, for refugees who had already been forced to leave everything they owned behind in Spain, this was an impossibly high price to pay just for safety.
For those who couldn't pay, which was most people, there was another option, a temporary 8-month residency permit for a much smaller fee of 8 cruzados. Most people, Rabbi Saba included, took this deal. They were just hoping it would buy them enough time to find a way to a new, permanent home.
But here's the thing. When those 8 months were up, their situation was even more desperate. There weren't enough ships to take them anywhere else, and since they'd left Spain with practically nothing, they had absolutely no money left to pay any of the king's fees. They were trapped.
And this is when the king showed his true colors. He issued this brutal ultimatum. You either convert to Christianity, or you will be declared slaves of the crown. That refuge of false hope had slammed its doors shut for good.
For the families who refused to give up their faith, an absolutely unimaginable fate was waiting for their children. The king came up with a punishment so cruel, it was something not even the Spanish Inquisition had dared to do.
Royal agents swept through the community, and they forcibly separated around 700 adolescent children from their parents. The king had a very specific and horrifying purpose in mind for them.
These children were herded onto ships and sent to these remote, recently colonized islands called São Tomé and Príncipe, just off the western coast of Africa. The official reason given was to populate the place, but the reality was so much more sinister.
So what exactly was on these islands? What kind of life was the king sending these children to build?
Well, the islands were notorious for one thing: a huge population of large, carnivorous lizards. The plan wasn't to populate the islands, it was to condemn these children to a terrifying death. Reports from the time say that nearly all of them perished, either from starvation, neglect, or being devoured by the island's predators.
Then, in 1495, King John II died. But for the Jews still in Portugal, the persecution only got worse under his successor, King Manuel I. A new decree in 1496 set the stage for one final, heart-wrenching choice.
King Manuel declared that all Jews had to leave Portugal, but it was a trick. As the families got ready to depart, the king ordered all the remaining Jewish children to be forcibly baptized. Then he told the parents they were free to go, but their children, now officially Christian, were considered property of the state and had to stay. They were forced to choose between their faith and their own flesh and blood.
Rabbi Saba saw this all firsthand. He watched as the community's leader, Rabbi Shimon Maimi, and his entire family were publicly tortured to serve as an example, but they refused to convert. They chose martyrdom to sanctify God's name, an ultimate act of faith known as Kiddush Hashem.
In the midst of all this horror, Rabbi Saba himself was captured. His own children had been taken from him. His life's work, all of his books, his commentaries, they were confiscated. But his story wasn't over, not by a long shot. It was about to become a testament to the power of memory.
Rabbi Saba's journey from this point was just an unbelievable ordeal. He survived 6 months in a dungeon fort, he was exiled to a fortified prison in Morocco, and then, miraculously, he escaped to the city of Fez. It took him years to recover from the immense physical and emotional trauma. And once he did, he began this incredible task.
He had lost a lifetime of scholarship, all his books gone. And yet, with no notes, nothing to guide him, he painstakingly rewrote 2 of his major works entirely from memory. Among them was Tseror Hamor, the very book where he recorded the tragedy of the island of lizards, making sure that that story would not be lost to time.
Now, the primary source for this account is soysephardi.org, which in turn cites halasha.org. And the historical context of these events, the expulsions from the Iberian Peninsula and the colonization of São Tomé, is backed up by sources like the Jewish Virtual Library and Encyclopedia Britannica.
And all of this brings us to a final, really crucial question. The story of Rabbi Saba shows us that even when books are burned and communities are destroyed, memory and testimony can become the most powerful archives of all.
This has been a publication of the portal soysephardi.org. If you want to explore more stories just like this, please subscribe to the soysephardi.org YouTube channel. And you know what? Share this explainer on your social networks to help keep this history alive. Thank you so much for listening.